Hello, this is Christine from Casey Dragonfly and the Ears Have It. And today I wanted to do a slightly different type of video than my usual instructions into peyote stitch beadwork. And I wanted to delve into satisfying a request someone had sent me to review their jewelry making kit. And this is a company that sells on Amazon.com. And the name of the company is Monvict Store. This is their name. And they're a company out of China. And they had this beginning jewelers making kit that they had sent me and asked me to review. So I got the kit and I looked it over and I thought long and hard about what I was going to do on the video. At first I was a little hesitant to make the video because I like always to do something positive and encouraging as far as information that I impart to people and share with them. This one, there are good points about this kit. There's also some negatives, and I always want to be truthful and honest about my reviews and what I'm letting people know, and that is as important as being positive, I believe. So Monvict sent me this kit, and I'm going to open it up and I'm going to show you. First off, it comes in this really nice case, which is, it's kind of thick. I mean, it's a little thicker than I normally use, but since I don't travel and do shows anymore, I have my stuff in my studio, and it's all set out on my table, so I don't carry it. And if I did, this could be useful. And so the case is well built. It's got a zippered edge here, and it's fairly well made. And this is exactly how the kit appeared. These wires and stretch cord were shrink wrapped together. That's really kind of the only difference. And this little kit here, Small Findings, was also shrink wrapped. So it's a nice presentation as far as what's in here. And I started to get in here and look at each piece individually, and that's where I started to run into some concerns. The company, the lady I spoke with, was very nice, and she wanted to remind me that this is not a professional kit by any means. This is a kit that is a beginner's jewelry kit, and that's fine. I reviewed it with that in consideration. And I also have the belief that if you're going to give a kit as a gift or have it for yourself, then it should be of at least some quality that you could depend on for many years. In some cases, some of these pieces I don't believe are going to last years, and that's unfortunate. I'm going to give you some examples of what I ran across when I was looking at it, and I'm going to be honest, some of these pieces I've never worked with before, and I wouldn't have an opportunity to demonstrate, and that's okay. I'm not going to pass any kind of opinion or judgment on those. That's better left to somebody who's had actual experience with some of these pieces. So I'm going to start off on the left hand side here, and the kit includes a tape measure, which is a typical fiberglass tape measure. It's accurate. I measured it against several different rulers I have in my home, and that was accurate. Let me get that back in there. Okay, I guess I'll leave it right there. This next piece is a knife, and at first I was kind of taken aback by it because it isn't completely flat like if you take scissors, their blades are completely straight to each other, and this one, they're curved, and that looks like that was purposeful. This is something I wasn't certain how to use. I thought maybe at first it would be for cutting wire, but it's not strong enough, and then I thought, well, I'm going to look it up and see. And it's called a floral cutters tool, floral tape, which is something that I don't do. That's for wrapping flowers and arrangements. So that's something that would be useful for someone else. This kit, by the way, has a variety of different tools. You won't use everything if you purchase it. It's kind of designed to have some basics that would be good for a few different vocations. The next piece here are tweezers, and they're good for picking up very tiny pieces, like as in this kit here. I'm sorry about the glare. I'm going to try and adjust the light. Wow. Okay. So it doesn't glare. There we go. And the blades are slightly off. Unfortunately, I don't think you can see how off they are on this. And they're not, but they're not as, it's not as important that they be aligned in this, I suppose. But they are a little bit off here. They're not particularly strong, but then they may not need to be. This could be used for picking up sequins or rhinestones for some detailed little work like that. This next piece is for gauging the size of different stones and round semi-precious stones. An example here of one of my necklaces. You open this up and you put it in like that between these two blades, and that gives you the measurement right there, which would be right here. And these are 19 millimeter stones. So that seems of kind of a typical quality to one that I have on hand, which I will pull out and show you here. Certainly I've seen metal versions of this, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it being plastic. It may not be as accurate. Again, this isn't something a professional would use, but this is the one that I use, and it's really identical. So, okay, so up here in the corner, these three tabs actually belong to some threaders. So if you do embroidery, something with thread, that's what you'd use them for. You pull the thread through the needle here, and the eye of the needle goes down over this. In fact, I have a needle here I can demonstrate with. And this is a rather large needle, but that's okay. There's the eye right there, if you can see it. And what you do is you put the needle through like that. Do you know what? Let me put this here, and then you'll be able to see better against it. So this goes through the eye of the needle, and then you put your thread through here, pull it through, and then when you remove it, the needle will be threaded. So these, it's kind of hard to go wrong with these. It's securely glued in there. I tend to go through a lot of those when I'm doing embroidery because they are very, very frail as far as the little wire here. So I'm going to put that back in, and we'll go on to the next piece. Unfortunately, I think I bent that kind of badly. That's okay, because I don't normally use these. And there are two others. Now, this tube here, I like the idea of having needles in this tube. That was pretty smart there. It's hard to contain needles. I have a wooden needle holder, needle case, that's about that big. So, but this is for larger needles. And let me address a couple of things here. First, this is a thimble. And when I was growing up in the 60s, thimbles also covered the tip of your finger. And I didn't like them because they were awkward to use. I think this might be of a better use, because if you're coming up against something that's tough to poke a hole through, canvas or leather, a soft leather, you can push the needle against it and then just push down so you don't end up hurting your finger. This piece I was immediately familiar with. This is to open jump rings, and I'll demonstrate that. I just want to show you comparatively. This is mine that I've had for almost ever since I've been doing jewelry, so at least 20 years. It's much thicker, as you can tell, and it feels better to me, sturdier. Yeah, so I'm gonna pull out, see if I have a jump ring here. Well, I can actually get one out of the little kit here, and I'll show you how it works. And I'm going to use one of their tools. What you do is you put the ring on your finger. I think it's called actually a jump ring separator. And then you take needle nose pliers and you put it in the slat like that and open it up. And voila, you have a jump ring you can now use to thread things. So this is useful and sturdy. It will last. Putting these two pieces aside, this is the tube. It's not glass, and I appreciated that. That contains very long needles, and you can use these for upholstery. Needles like this are pretty commonly used for tufting and attaching buttons to pillows and cushions, and going through many layers. So they had a couple of varieties of sizes. Now, I liked these until I actually noticed one was bent in here, and it was this one, and I tried to straighten it out a little bit, and of course with something like this, it made the bend worse. So it was not this bent when I got it, but it was a little bit bent. And a comparable needle, this one is from a company called Dritz Home, and they are also, if you can see that, made in China. And the one that I had in my stock is very much sturdier, and unfortunately this one is pretty weak. There you go. And that was kind of a disappointment to see. When I do peyote stitch beadwork, I do bend my needles after a while, and they're a good standard quality, and they will bend like this if you intentionally bend them, and nobody would go through and do what I just did to this needle. I'm just demonstrating that this is pretty weak. This one I have at home by Dritz. See, I'm putting a lot of pressure on that, and while I bend it, it snaps back, springs back. So these needles have no strings. So if you have one of these kits, don't put it under that kind of pressure. But when I do peyote stitch beadwork, after doing a couple of projects, the needles do naturally bend. And that's fine because they're much, much thinner. And these are not, but these are not going to withstand any pressure at all. That was my, I don't know, my first disappointment was that the needles were pretty weak. This is an awl, and it's made of a good sturdy steel there. Can't bend it. There you go. These are used for piercing leather, paper, things like that, and it's a good quality. I have one on hand, but I will definitely be using that later, and I'll definitely keep that in stock. So that was a good piece to find out of here. Now we come to probably the thing most people will buy this for, outside of the fact it looks like it has everything you need, and that's the tools. And these I was okay with until I held one of them. I think it was the blunt nose pliers. I held them up to the light and saw, unfortunately, that they're not perfectly aligned. These blades do not meet. And I think if I put this here and you can see the light through them as I pass it over, see, they don't meet, and that's not good. The blades that I usually get, the cutters that I usually get, are from Pakistan, and they're very well made and they're very good quality. The needle nose ones, this is my needle nose pair, and this is theirs. And unfortunately, again, I'm going to show you the tips. Here's the tip of these. They meet perfectly. Here's the tip of this pair that came with this kit. And hopefully you can see this. They're off. And it's not because I'm putting pressure on them. Look, I'll turn them around. Put the same amount of pressure on them. They're still off. They were not forged well. This other pair that's used to round wire is also this one is even worse off. The tips are than that one. They're very badly done. And this is the pair that I have in my collection. As you can see, they're perfectly aligned. I've had these for years, probably, I don't know, probably about 10 years now. And they're still in perfect alignment. I just got these from Monvict, and they're awful. They're not lined up. And this does affect when you wire wrap something. Something else, this type of metal forging, it's prone, in my experience, to chip. And it's kind of got a rough surface, which will mar the wire. These have a smooth surface. You can see the difference. The ones that I have will last much longer, and they were not hard to find. I found them in a bead store. Any bead store that has a good quality and selection will have those type of pliers. They're worth getting individually, as fun as it is to get a kit. If the pieces in the kit are not well made, you're going to have a problem, and you're not going to be happy camper. And the person receiving this gift is not going to be, once you put these under enough pressure, and they crack after a few months. And I'm going to put these back in here. Okay, that's all the pieces in here. I want to go now to the pieces in the little tray here, which I love little trays. This is going to be perfect for a peyote stitch beadwork, delicate bead project. It's going to be a lot of fun to put things in, for me personally. Now, some of these pieces, you're not going to use them in every project. There's some tiny screws here, which they look like the smaller version of screws that you would use for old wire picture frames. And I'm not quite sure how they could be used in jewelry. I don't think they could, but that doesn't mean they wouldn't be useful. These here are plugs, some plastic plugs, and I really have no idea. I mean, they're not something I would use, but they might be useful to somebody out there. And the listing for this on Amazon does have a good detail of, it shows you the individual pieces in here and it describes them. Not exactly what they're for, but if you're a jewelry maker, you'll know immediately whether it's something you can use or not. There's some lobster claws in here, which I'm going to create a piece of jewelry. I'm going to redo a necklace that has some tarnished pieces in it, and the design doesn't exactly work, so I'll probably end up using one of these lobster claws, and I want to put it up under some stress, and then I'll post in the comments how that stress test went as to the quality of these. These are eye hooks. They're not, I don't understand why they were added in here. They're so tiny as to be only really useful for putting crystals on. And I've got a crystal here. I'm going to demonstrate this. Let me get a better color so you can see. This is a Swarovski bicone crystal. And what you do typically is you would thread it on here, and then you take the rounded pliers. I take mine normally, and you would do this to create a loop, and then that way you can dangle them either as a spacer and an earring, or you could hang them off of, say, the bottom of a necklace or an earring. These would connect other pieces within it. Eye pins, that was a proper name for them. Eye pins like this, in more recent years, when wire wrapping became more effective way of doing jewelry construction, you would use a much longer eye hook that would probably be like this. And when you make that loop, then you wrap the wire at the base, because these wires are typically not that thick or sturdy, and it's just stronger to do that, to reinforce them. And it became kind of a style. So these really, these tiny little eye hooks are only good for doing something like this. And that's fine. You know, I do crystals like that. If you do earrings, that's going to be very useful to you. So, let's see here. So I like the case. I like the thought that went into the variety of pieces. There's some leather cord or silk cord clamps that would be for the ends of a choker or a necklace. And those are pretty nifty. If we can get them out of here. They have teeth, and you can put your end of your necklace in there and clamp it down. So lots of fun little bits that you won't use everything, but you will use a few things in here. These little round guys are for clamping the end of wire that you run through them, and then run through your stringing material. You can't see it, but there's a hole. It's hard to get this in focus. There's a hole right in the middle. Oh, there you go. You probably see it now. Oh, you can see the shadow. And then it clamps. So they provided silver and gold would have been fun if they'd included copper, but that's my favorite, is copper and silver to work in. Okay, so I'll put the needles back in here, and there's one more thing to review in here. Well, actually two, and that's the wire. There's gold and silver wire that was included in this kit, and I knew as soon as I saw it, there probably isn't too much on here. There's enough to do a couple of projects, but the gauge of this wire is practically micro thin. It's very, very, very thin, and it's not even the minimum that would be good to use for anything that's going to go through any kind of everyday physical use by somebody who wears earrings or necklaces. If I bent this a couple of times, well, let's try it. Let's see the gauge strength on this, because it already has a bend in here from when it was packaged, but it's there. It just broke after a couple of times. And people normally are pretty tough on their jewelry. They throw them into a jewelry box. They take, pieces on and off every day that they like. And this, I absolutely would not recommend it for stringing necklaces or dangling earrings that are going to have any kind of pressure on them. It's not going to hold up. As a comparison, I get my wires from Beadsmith, and this is 26 gauge. This is actually what they have included, what Monvict included in this kit is thinner than 26, so this might be 28 gauge. And I know some designers use that. I don't. I like to make jewelry that's a little sturdier, and it's just not going to hold up. The other beading wires that I like to get are, this is from the Bead Buddy, and these actually have multiple strands. It's almost as thin. I don't know if you can see that. The wire by Monvict is so thin it's disappearing into the light here. There's also Beadalon, which has 19 strands, and this is maybe a touch thicker than the wire they provided. And this 19 strand, 49 strand are gonna be much sturdier and last a lot longer. So this that Monvict provided is in gold and silver. It's almost something you would give a child as far as a kit that maybe they could play with. It could be useful for that, but it'd have to be under supervision, because a child could end up putting this in their mouth or poking their eyes out. I wouldn't really recommend this for a young child. But then if someone is seriously wants to get into doing some beading, then I would encourage them to have something stronger than these. It's nice and it's thoughtful of Monvict to put these in, but when you give people something that they expect, and when they pay the money for something like this, they want something that they can use that's going to be a good quality and make them feel happy about. And if you go that even little more mile and push it, then and give them something a little more than they expect, they're going to come back and they're going to give you favorable reviews. And that's important to a company, to the life of the company. And it's something that, unfortunately, I think Chinese companies as a whole, the ones that do the cheaper products, do not understand. And it's all seems to be about selling in a dollar for them. And that's why I'm always wary of items not made in the U.S., but also items in the U.S. I'd like them to be a good quality. And I'm really, some of these pieces I'm on the fence about. It all depends on what you buy the kit for. This is the last thing here, this is some stretch thread, which you can use to make those stretchy bracelets. You know, they're kind of a fad a few years ago. I don't see them much around anymore, but this, again, would have to be something that you would have to put under a test. It feels pretty good. It has a bit of stretch. It springs back, which is important. But it's something that would have to be tested, and I might get the opportunity to one day. It's not typically what I offer as far as jewelry, as far as my company goes. And that's okay. You know, there's other companies out there making a lot of money and doing quality jewelry with that, and that's fine. So this kit, I think, I don't know if there was a scale of 1 to 5 as far as, you know, 1 being something you wouldn't buy and 5 being something you'd rave about to your friends. I almost could not gauge it that way, because it all depends on what you buy it for. If you buy it for the tools, you eventually are going to be disappointed. They don't look like they have a good life. And tools like this, you can find them where they have a lifetime guarantee, or at least a couple of years guarantee. The blades not meeting is not a good thing at all. That's going to really impacted my my opinion of the quality of what's in this kit. The pliers are off. Both of these are off. So every one of these 3 tools, there's a problem with them, and it isn't something that I would want to keep. I would return this and go, hey, this, you know, these aren't good. So, and to give you an idea on those pliers and whether this is just a one-off problem as far as the blunt nose pliers, they also gave me this to review. It's a side wire plier, and its cutting capacity, they say, is soft copper wire or iron wires or plastic. It cannot cut steel. It's not rated to, it's not insulated, so you can't use it to cut anything as far as electricity is concerned. But this, these blunt nose have the exact same problem as its smaller counterpart. The blade does not match. So if you cut anything thin with it, like they're recommending, it's not going to work. It's not going to be a clean cut, as my husband mentioned. The blades do meet here. They do at least a line up, which is nice to see. But this thin area here, which if I pass this under, you can see, it's, you know, that's kind of useless. You know, when you buy a pair of pliers, you want it to cut, you want it to be a clean cut, and that's all there is to it. You know, it can be pretty useless in other cases for what you get, unless you're cutting something bigger and, you know, you can cut it rough. But people should be made aware of this. It's just not well made. So that's my review, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you know anyone else that has anything that they want reviewed, jewelry, tools, I'm more than happy to look at some samples and put them through any tests or motions that you might want, or wear them for a while and see if they hold up to everyday stress. This is Christine. My company is Casey Dragonfly, and I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to hit the subscribe button on the channel, and feel free to leave any comments. You can leave positive, negative comments. You can ask questions, make observations. I'll answer any and all questions. And thank you, and I hope you have a blessed day, week, month, year, and lifetime.